Vice! You dumbass! Start making sense, you rotten book, or you're gonna be sorry. Maybe I'll rip your pages out one by one, or maybe I'll put you in the goddamn furnace! How can someone with such a big smart brain get hypnotized like a little bitch, huh? Oh, Shadow Lord, I love you, Shadow Lord. Come over here and give Vice a big sloppy kiss, Shadow Lord. Now pull your head out of your goddamn ass and start fucking helping us!
2020 marks the 10th anniversary of the release of Nier Replicant and Nier Gestalt, two games which have gone on to spawn several stage plays, novels, an upcoming mobile game, and an incredibly successful sequel released in 2017 called Nier Automata. Thanks to the success of Nier Automata, many new people have been introduced to the Drake and Nier series, but whether it be due to accessibility reasons or just that some of the games aren't that great in general, many people haven't gone back to play the earlier games in the series. But with the recent announcement of a remaster of Nier Replicant, many of these new fans are going to be able to jump in and experience the story of the original game. I'm sure many people are eager to go back and play Replicant, but for anyone on the fence, I plan to go into why I think the original Nier is such a special game, and why anybody interested in the Drake and Nier series, or just RPGs in general, should check this game out. Because there isn't any gameplay footage of the Replicant remaster yet, all of the footage in this video will be of the original PS3 release of Nier from 2010. For anyone that doesn't know, you may notice that the main character in the footage looks much older than the character that appears in the promotional materials for the Replicant remaster, and that's because Nier was split into two releases in Japan, Replicant on the PS3 and Gestalt on the Xbox 360. These games are essentially the exact same game with some minor changes to dialogue, except in Replicant you play as Brother Nier looking after his sister, and in Gestalt you play as Papa Nier looking after his daughter. When the game was brought over to the West, the decision was made to only localize Gestalt, leading to both platforms getting the Papa Nier story despite the supplemental material like the Grimoire Nier and audio dramas being based off the Replicant version. These supplemental materials also never received an official release in the West. However, fans have gone out of their way to translate them, and I would recommend checking them out after you play the game for more info and lore. With that out of the way, I'm going to move on to a brief overview of the game's story. This video will contain spoilers for Ending E of Drakengard, but will not contain any spoilers for Nier outside of the first hour or so of the game, yet there will be general gameplay footage past that point. The plot of Nier takes place many years after Ending E of the original Drakengard, an ending that was considered to be a joke ending for many years that sees the main character Kaim and his pact partner Angelus end up in modern-day Tokyo. Far above the city, they fight an immense godlike being who crumbles into a strange white substance when defeated. Shortly after, Kaim and Angelus are shot down by the Tokyo Air Force. The game begins in summer 2049, and what appears to be snow falls heavily on a ruined and desolate city. Inside an abandoned grocery store rests Yona and her father Nier, still clinging to his weapon as he sleeps. A voice suddenly pierces the silence and offers to save Yona's life in exchange for Nier's soul. Nier drops his weapon in his slumber and is awoken by the sound. After looking about, he angrily kicks a nearby book away from him, presumably the source of the voice that was heard. As the book slides across the floor, dark creatures called Shades manifest in front of him, and Nier prepares to fight. After he manages to fend off the creatures, Nier runs back to check on Yona. Here he finds the book near Yona, and warns her not to touch it under any circumstances. As he makes his way back to the front of the store, more Shades appear. Overwhelmed and unable to fight off this wave, Nier has no choice but to accept the exchange offered to him by the book if he is to protect his daughter. Now harnessing the magical power granted to him by the book, Nier is able to fight his way through the Shades' attack. With the creatures defeated, he goes to check on Yona once again, only to discover that in an attempt to help Nier, Yona has also touched the mysterious book. She doubles over onto Nier as ghastly black writing begins to creep up her face. Nier holds Yona in his arms and begins to cry out for help as the scene fades on the two.
Yona, what have you done?
So I wanted to...
No! Yona! Yona! We need help. We need help! Please, anyone! Help! Help us!
We then skip forward to 1,312 years later to find that the world is one on the brink of death. Plague and disease spreads by the day, and most people have already died. Nier lives in a small house with his sickly daughter, Yona, taking on odd jobs here and there to help pay for medicines to keep her healthy. One day after Nier gets home from his work, he tells Yona a story of a flower that has the power to grant wishes called a lunar tear, and assures her it has the power to cure her illness. When Nier arrives home the next day from work, he finds that Yona is gone, and after talking to the head of the village Popola, he figures out that Yona has gone to the lost shrine nearby to find a lunar tear for herself. Nier makes his way to the shrine and begins to fight his way through the shades up the tower, and at the top he finds Yona, asleep behind a barrier blocked by 2 large statues and a book. Nier begins to assault the barrier, attempting to break through and free his daughter. In the process, Nier frees the slumbering book, a book named Grimoire Weiss, who agrees to help Nier fight off the shades and rescue his daughter. After fighting off the statues that come alive and attack him, and making his way to his daughter, the 3 all escape from the crumbling shrine. Yona seems fine at first, and begins to apologize for running off on her own to find the lunar tear, but as she speaks, the black scrawl begins to make its way up her arm. It is revealed that the disease appeared a little over a month ago, and is fatal if a cure cannot be found. Nier once again goes to Popola for advice, who tells him an old legend of a black book named Grimoire Noir that appears and plunges the world into chaos, and of the white book named Grimoire Weiss, who emerges to fight Grimoire Noir with his sealed verses and bring peace to the world. Unfortunately, Weiss seems to have forgotten these verses. Nier decides that his best chance of curing Yona is to seek out the sealed verses with Grimoire Weiss. With newfound determination, Nier and Weiss set off together towards a group of shades gathering in a nearby city called the Eyrie. The game from this point on sees you go from location to location to collect the sealed verses and discover the truth behind all the mysteries the game sets up in the opening act. What exactly are Grimoire Weiss and Grimoire Noir? Why are Nier and Yona still alive, 1300 years after the opening of the game? What exactly are the Shades, and why have they been attacking humanity for the last millennia? Unraveling these plot threads is what makes this game so engrossing, and I really think the answers are something you should figure out for yourself. This is a Yoko Taro game after all, and if you've played any of the Drakengard games or Automata, you know that there is much more beneath the surface of this story to uncover. Now, the story is the part that is pretty universally known as the good part of the original Nier, with opinions on the gameplay being rather mixed. I personally really enjoy the gameplay of Nier, as simple as it can be at times, and find it nowhere near the level of monotonous that the original Drakengard was. The game is a semi-open world RPG with the majority of the opening hours of the game taking place in the starting village, talking to villagers to accept side quests, and venturing out to fight various animals and shades. But as the game goes on, the story will take you to a variety of new locations that branch out in different directions from the village, each with their own different cultures and lore behind them. Combat can be an occasionally dull affair, but it's still fairly satisfying. The square or X button will throw out a basic attack, while holding down the button will set up a charged attack that varies based on the weapon you have equipped. Triangle or Y will do a shoulder charge, which is helpful for getting out of situations where you're pressured or surrounded. The cross button or A will allow you to jump or double jump if pressed again, and circle or B will interact with various objects or people throughout the game. In terms of defensive options, the right trigger or R2 will allow you to do a dodge roll, making avoiding enemy attacks very easy, or if you'd rather stay close to the enemy and counterattack, the left trigger or L2 will block the attack. Depending on your weapon, you can also use a variety of finishing attacks by pressing the attack button while blocking. Most of the smaller enemies throughout the game will go down with only a few swings of your weapon, but what really keeps the combat satisfying is the sense of impact each swing carries and the sheer amount of blood that appears from the enemy. Drakengard also had a similar feeling with the blood, but there wasn't as much weight to the combat, and the added mobility in Nier adds a lot to the gameplay and keeps it feeling much more fresh throughout the runtime of the game. But what really adds spice to the gameplay is the magic system. After adding Grimoire Weiss to your party, you gain the ability to use a variety of magic spells that you gain progressively throughout the game. You can use 2 different magic spells at a time mapped to the L1, R1 buttons, or the shoulder bumpers. If you want, you can also sacrifice your dodge and block buttons to equip up to 4 magic spells at a time. Depending on what spells you use, you can either summon giant hands in order to dish out some massive attacks, shoot piercing lances from a distance, shoot small bursts of energy, and much more. If you've played Automata, you may notice that the magic system works somewhat similarly to the pods from that game. The spells are very helpful in a lot of different situations and work well to keep the combat from becoming too stale. A lot of this may change in the remaster, as they are reportedly reworking the combat system with help from Platinum Games, but the original game definitely has its own charm and is my favorite game from the studio Cavia, who unfortunately disbanded and was absorbed shortly after the release of Nier. Accompanying the gameplay is a phenomenal soundtrack by Keiichi Okabe, with accompanying vocals by Amy Evans, who both returned for Automata, so if you've played that game, you're already familiar with how breathtaking their work is. The entire soundtrack is one of my favorites of all time, with particular standouts for me like Song of the Ancients, Kaine Salvation, and both of Emil's themes, all of which still managed to tug at my heartstrings even long after playing. The soundtrack isn't the only fantastic aspect to the sound, however. The voice acting for all of the main characters is some of my favorites in the genre. Laura Bailey as Kaine, Julianne Taylor as Emil, Liam O'Brien as Grimoire Weiss, and of course Jameson Price as Papa Nier. Each of the actors put everything they have into their performances and perfectly embody their characters. While the remastering of Replicant over Gestalt unfortunately means that Jameson Price will almost definitely not return in the remaster, I'm hoping that the rest of the voice actors reprise their roles because they all delivered such iconic performances that they're forever attached to the characters in my mind, and I'm not sure anyone else can swear as Kaine quite like Laura Bailey.
Is that it? Are you done talking?
Kaine, don't speak to your grandma like that.
You're going to stop talking now. And then I'm going to walk over to you and very carefully extend my hand, reach into your chest, and pull out your fucking heart!
Did you just say what I think you said?
Visually, the game can look pretty decent. Despite the lower resolution, the environments have held up okay over the years and each have their own unique vibe to them, with the opening village feeling very comfy with its wide open fields populated with people just living about, and a small town filled with inhabitants that talk to you like one of them as you pass by on the streets. While places like the area give off a very discomforting and isolated feeling as everybody stays in their disconnected and raised homes while yelling angrily at you to leave. Each location being both visually and culturally distinct lends itself well to giving the game a sense of scale and makes it feel much more like an actual world despite the game itself being pretty small when compared to much bigger games. I find that when developers go out of their way to make each area in a small world unique, it somehow makes it feel bigger than a game with an actual large world with very little difference throughout, something that things like Yakuza in particular are very good at. While Nier certainly has a fair share of open areas with nothing but enemies inhabiting them, they usually don't take more than a few minutes to get through, and once you make it to the other side, you're almost always treated with a brand new and interesting locale. If I had any complaints with the visuals, it would probably be some of the character models. Most of them are fine and still look alright, but it does bring things down a little when you see the main character's face in a cutscene and he looks like a weird goblin. Nier Replicant didn't have this problem because it had the Bishonen brother Nier, but that's not the version we got. Overall, I feel like the original Nier gets a bad rap, partially for its simple and occasionally tedious gameplay, but also because a lot of people are discovering it after playing Nier Automata. And of course it's going to seem a little lackluster compared to the game that came out 7 years later developed by Platinum Games, whose entire company is built on developing fast, satisfying action games. But the original still tells an absolutely incredible story that at its best hits just as hard as any of the emotional moments in Automata, and sometimes even harder. I'm happy that with the remaster coming out, more people will get to experience this wonderful game with improvements made to the gameplay and visuals. But do I think you should go back and play the original before the remaster? Well, that depends. Nier was released on the PS3 and Xbox 360 and was never added to the Xbox One backwards compatibility program, so if you're trying to play it now, you either need hardware that many people probably got rid of when the new systems came out, or a powerful enough computer to play it through an emulator. This is without a doubt the biggest barrier of entry. I would say that if you do have access to the hardware, you should absolutely try and play the original. Not only will it give you something to compare to when the remaster eventually does come out to see what they may change or add, but playing the original will also allow you to see the story from the perspective of Papa Nier, since the remaster appears to only be doing the Replicant story with Brother Nier. However, if you don't have access to hardware to play this game or just can't get into the gameplay, I urge you to please pick up the remaster when it releases and experience one of the best stories I've personally seen in a game. Well, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far, and if you enjoyed this video and want to see me talk about more RPGs or action games in the future, feel free to subscribe. I've got a lot of ideas in the works and should have more videos up soon. Also, if you want to get more into the Drake and Nier series but don't know where to start, I highly recommend checking out the channels Valkyrie Aurora and Klimps for their fantastic Drakengard and Nier lore videos, which I'll link in the description below. They helped me discover one of the most fascinating series of games I've ever played, and I cannot be more grateful for that. I'll be back with more in the future, and I hope all of you have as much fun as I have exploring the world of Nier.